about the way he lay there so perfectly still, yet with a sense of something enormously alive inside him, something almost insanely teeming with slumberous hidden vitality deep inside that made her feel like she was looking at a cave full of sleeping bats. "Don't," said Lorna, when Mees reached out a finger. "Don't touch him." "Germs?" guessed Sonny, but Lorna, a great fan of Agatha Christie, shook her head. "I don't think he's breathing," she said. "Look at his chest." Tentatively, she held her hand near the man's nose. "I think he's dead." The sand was coarse and gritty, the entire beach hard as a rock. If there were any footprints, Lorna couldn't make them out, though despite the trash can, there was a lot of trash on the ground, including cigarette butts and a beer bottle. Molson, Canadian. "We should do something," said Sonny. "We should get help." "You get help," said Mees. "I'm staying here." "It's not like he's going anywhere," Lorna pointed out. But once Mees had made her mind up, forget it. "Just try not to touch anything," Lorna added sternly. "Okay?" Of course, Lorna knew perfectly well that the minute she and Sonny were out of sight, Mees would do just that. It had been so obvious, her hand visibly itching to touch the man's cheek. "Sure," Mees said. She nodded her small, round face, a face that, no doubt due to its exceptionally round, dark eyes and full bow lips, its fringe of dark hair and pronounced widow's peak, tended to remind people of a pansy. Such a sweet little flower, with such a fierce expression. "Mr. Banner," Mees was thinking. "Mr. Banner, Mr. Banner, Mr. Banner, Mr. Banner. Think of me." That was what pansies said in the language of flowers. Chapter 2. Monday, January 1, 1872. Taught school. Bertie and Eve played dominoes. Tuesday, January 2. Taught school, went home at night, quilted on my skirt and Eve. Wednesday, January 3. Taught school, came home at night, hooked Bernie a mitten. Thursday, January 4. Taught school. Friday, January 5. Taught school. Saturday, January 6. At home, done housework. Aunt Tiny here all day. Sunday, January 7. At home all day, read some. George Wheeler and Hinkson here. Monday, January 8. Taught school. Went to singing class in Eve with Bertie. I hope it is not so. Out the window, the sun was shining on the lake, the whole surface a radiant copper blue, pricked with dazzling specks of white. Out the window, sunshine and fresh breezes, a family of ducks riding the little swells near shore. Mallards, the dull brown mother and her cute yellow babies. I hope it is not so. Andrea Murdoch stiffened with the usual mix of impatience and affection, as for the third time that morning she listened to her husband take the stairs from the second floor two at a time, like a man half his age, prior to yanking open the cellar door and sharpening his pencil in the sharpener he'd insisted on attaching to the wall just below the light switch. Sharpening and whistling the same five-note phrase that came from nowhere and went nowhere, over and over, like birdsong. Murdoch, since the dawn of time, had kept their pencil sharpeners at the head of the cellar steps. Taught school, chickadee-dee. What else was there for an unmarried woman to do, thought Andrea. At least Miss Fair had been lucky enough to have a profession. At least she wasn't stuck washing and churning and baking and cleaning and churning and chatting and washing and baking, day in, day out, like the author of that last diary Andrea had restored, though this one's pages were in worse condition, ready to flake away at the lightest touch. Lucky Miss Inez Fair, Andrea thought grimly, peeling end paper from coverboard, young and unmarried and teaching school. Andrea Murdoch's bindery extended from the southeastern wall of the house and had windows on all three sides, providing an unobstructed view of Black Lake and a maple and beech and cedar obstructed view of the bike trail on the upper Varennes road. Midges, mayflies, black flies, bees, atmospheric vapors. A little higher than everything around it, the bindery perched at the lower tip of a 5-mile-long esker, wide-eyed and hopeful, in the spirit of a space capsule, finally ready to break from the mother ship. Back in the days of Inez Fair, none of it had been here. House, bindery, nothing. Nothing, that is, except the esker, which had been here forever, or at least since the Pleistocene, when long cracks appeared along the surface of the ice sheet. The lake also had been here for a very long time, though possibly not as long as the esker. If Andrea paid closer attention when her husband was talking, maybe she'd remember better. Esker. Ice sheet. She tugged at the last section of end paper, which had decided to hang on for dear life. Tenacious, just like Inez. Tenacious, doomed Inez Fair, Varennes village schoolmarm. Thursday, January 12. Taught school. Mr. Bacon asked me to go with him to the donation Tuesday eve. Thinking of thee, art thou of me? Though who exactly was this thee? It didn't seem like she meant Mr. Bacon, since Tuesday eve she went to the donation, whatever that was, with someone named Mart. In 1872, the year Inez Fair began the diary, the tip of the Esker would have been a popular location for picnics, given its fine view of Black Lake, which had once been full to the brim with glacial melt. Picnics, parties, maybe even donations, though certainly not in the dead of winter. It was also from here, a year later, that a band of mothers and fathers would watch Miss Inez Fair set forth in a leaky boat with the 8 victims of the Sunday school outing disaster. Nowadays, water levels everywhere were way down. The beach on the east side of the lake was twice as big as it had been 30 years ago when Andrea first moved to Varennes. She'd been Andy Eichmann then, and lived in a geodesic dome on French Hill with 4 Toggenburg goats. And while life had certainly been simpler, could you also say it had been happier? Once Andrea managed to grow a blue Hubbard squash the size of a manatee, but did that constitute happiness? The doorbell rang. No one who knew the Murdochs ever rang the doorbell, most of their friends and acquaintances tending to walk straight in without knocking. "Could you get that, Danny?" Andrea yelled, and then the bell rang again, and she realized her husband must be back in his study with his box of bones and the radio tuned as usual to the country music station's drawn-out stories of heartbreak and betrayal. "The news turned a person's heart to stone," he said. Wednesday, January 16. Taught school. Went to oyster supper with Eve. Came home late. Mother gave me a scolding that I guess I shall remember. A scolding, those were the days. Andrea opened the front door and found 2 girls standing on the porch. 2 girls, the usual combination, one pretty, one plain, and both vaguely familiar. Girl Scouts? Though when they went around selling cookies, weren't they supposed to wear their uniforms? "Sorry to barge in like this, Mrs. Murdoch," said the pretty one. "We'd like to use your phone, if that would be all right." Her blonde hair was coiled over her ears, Princess Leia style, and her perfectly regular features were perfectly distributed on a perfectly oval face that Andrea knew wouldn't hold up over time. She told them to come in and noticed that the blonde made a great show of wiping her feet on the welcome mat, whereas the brunette stumbled across the threshold and looked around wildly, the way a horse would, if it thought it was going into a barn and suddenly found itself in a flagstone entry hall instead. "Sorry to disturb," said the blonde. "My name is Sunny Crockett. We live just up the road, and this is my friend Lorna." "Of course," said Andrea, recognition striking at last. "Kathy Crockett's your mother." She handed her the phone, since Sunny so obviously appeared to be the one in charge, and then watched, interested, as Lorna calmly but firmly took the phone away from her and punched in 911. A man, Lorna reported, presumed dead, on the Varennes town beach. When Andrea gasped, Lorna held a surprisingly well-manicured finger to her lips. "Balding and heavy-set," she said. "Probably about 220 pounds or so. The skin pink, but not bright red, meaning he couldn't have been there for more than an hour. No obvious signs of foul play, unless you counted the head wound. No one else's footprints visible. She and her friends had been careful not to disturb the scene. And while she herself hadn't recognized the man, one of her friends said his name was Banner." Lorna listened intently to the dispatcher for several seconds, then shook her head. "Not T," she said. "B. B as in baby." She sounded exasperated, going on to explain that naturally she couldn't swear the man wasn't breathing, since, as she thought she'd mentioned, they'd been careful not to disturb the scene. Andrea felt her face turn red. Menopause, she realized, not embarrassment, though the girls couldn't be expected to know the difference. "Carl Banner?" Andrea asked. She tensed, hearing the sound of feet on the stairs. Wasn't Carl Banner ever going to leave her alone? Already she could imagine the change coming over her husband's calm blue eyes and smiling mouth, like a front moving in from the Great Lakes. It was hard being married to a man who treated the least impropriety like the end of the world, like freezing rain in a tractor trailer jackknifing right in front of him, and everything going so fast it might as well not be moving, the immense tire and the windshield racing toward each other, yet frozen in time. It was hard.